I have this intention, which makes me very uncomfortable, which is to share more of my ideas, my learnings, my ways of seeing, ways of working with neurodiversity, intelligence, and living learning here on the internet. And I don't know why I'm so uncomfortable with it. Everybody's doing it and has been doing it for years, and for whatever reason, um, I'm a skittish cat that way, but working on it, slow and steady, slow and steady. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Fell. I am a coach and consultant and guide of sorts. I work in neurodiversity, living human intelligence, living learning, philosophy, practical embodied living philosophy. Yeah, definitions of full body intelligence that bring us into deeper awareness of our own capacities in that regard, which are the same and extraordinary as human beings and unique for each of us. So that's my skis, that's what I do. It is tending to your living learning, tending to your living intelligence, that expansion, that wonder, that awe, that curiosity, keeping the operating system in relationship with the operator, if that's such a thing. Ooh, that's fun. Okay, sorry. Nerd alert, but everything that I'm into is nerdy. Intelligence was our topic. And so I notice in me, in myself, a place where I need to synthesize, organize, bring the thought forms, the shapes, the ideas, the meaning that lives in my body into more to be able to be communicated. Like I call it above the waterline of verbal intelligence. Conscious awareness also lives here, but conscious awareness and relationship with my intelligence doesn't have to be verbal, which maybe that's true for all of us, probably is. So I'm walking, and my preferred method here is just voice memos. I have a barn full of voice memos that, I could like also maybe share somewhere that would be vulnerable. I could put them in a little cache somewhere and I have to like go find them. That'd be cool. Um, but so the first, this desire, the knowing that I need to sort of organize, come into relationship with some shape and form for co-exploration, because the context here is a co-exploration. I'm not coming into this podcast being on a pedestal. I'm not coming here with sort of like, too tightly held a theory, or I don't have like a crazy call to action, or sort of I'm not trying to like drive a point here. This podcast is supposed to be co-exploratory and ask questions and, space for associative thinking, co-creative exploration. So the first thing that comes into my awareness is like, okay, there's like this in-breath, and I want to like expand into the edges of intelligence and its meaning. And the words sentience and consciousness show up. And so there's like an ephemerality to that language. When I say chair, that is a very straightforward, most of us are going to imagine a chair, material, four legs, unless you grew up in a place where there are only beanbags or there were no chairs. But really, the difference in logical type or the levels of abstraction of a word like intelligence. And the first thing there, not the first thing, the next thing that comes to mind is I just riff, which is what I'm kind of doing here now, kind of feeling into that voice memo and the space where I was when I was walking and moving, trying to tune out the fact that there's a video watching me. Close my eyes. Levels of abstraction, and then definition implicitly as sort of like pinning something down, right? What is consciousness? What is sentience? What is intelligence? But really, a process orientation, an ecosystemic and process orientation to physics and to reality is more a question of like, how does intelligence work, or how does consciousness work? Like, how is a more lexical, there's more physiology in the word how, in the question of how, than there is in the question of what. Um, how do we measure sentience? Why are we attempting to measure sentience or define it? What do we mean when we say consciousness? There's a squish in form here commensurate with its actual like squish in form, the edges of what we know and can measure and see and pin down and all that stuff, right? And then there's like a fundamental nature to this. I keep kind of just gesturing out there, but there's like a fundamentalness to this place we're talking about. So intelligence like lives in this strata, and I just want to acknowledge that. From there, immediately I come into biodiversity and the intelligence of in a pine tree. Or what, let's back up a level. I'm going planetary, right? Let's go alien, universal, um, solar, Saturnian intelligence, um, atmospheric intelligence, artificial intelligence. Can there even be such a thing? I have questions. But if we kind of scope to biology, planetary biology, there's this term in the German language, Umwelt, which is really the idea here is that the perception of a being and the experience of a being is commensurate with its design and its physiology, how it processes. So a bat, sonar, echolocation, right? Its intelligence functions as it does. And so this primacy of physiology as a definition for intelligence, but also this connection to perception. If you go to dictionary definitions of intelligence, of which, see, there's never one dictionary definition of anything. Words are qualitative, and that's cool and wild, weirdo labyrinth. Perception, intelligence, comma, the ability to acquire skills and use the ability to acquire information and use it as knowledge. Knowledge as skills, knowledge as learning. What does the bat learn? What does the pine tree learn? So expanding and redefining our definition of intelligence seems to me always pragmatic because we want to have like a living meaning with what the fuck we're saying. We do. And we are enculturated with meaning and definitions that we get to revisit, compost the old, look at where some of it might be living in us. That's the power of words. That's the power of the body, full body intelligence, and where memory and perception interact. Fascinating stuff. So for me, neurodiversity fits right in here. Intelligence, neurodiversity. This really normalizes, gives structural frame to all dolphins are dolphins. And so they live as dolphins live, learn as dolphins learn. And yet they're also, these distinct individuals with differences, seen differences, unseen differences, age, gender, their own neurodiversity within their species, right? That is a real thing, right? And so neurodiversity frames intelligence, learning, identity at the same differences and distinction level, which I think is really, really powerful and important and necessary. So if we're talking about intelligence, neurodiversity absolutely has a seat at the table, and then some from like a lived philosophical, but also just to like help us be more precise and deepen our understanding and capacity for working with our own and others' intelligence. So that's cool. Expanded definitions of measures of learning, measures of the application of knowledge. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. So too, over here, parallel, our own understanding of human physiology and our own exploration of how intelligence moves, works, lives, evolves in any human body mind and in my distinct, mine commensurate with differences, your distinct, yours commensurate with differences, and how we name and understand and, kind of integrate awareness of those differences, right? Intelligence and learning in the service of. So there's lots more to explore here and go deeper into, including like I have this kind of word cloud. As you can probably see, I'm a pretty associative thinker and pretty liminal. That feels right and honest for me. It's also very spatial, right? It has been there's like a living breath to an exploration, to a philosophical exploration, to a jam, to an existential jam. Apparently, even when you're doing it with yourself. Fuck you guys, this shit's wild. Okay, so I wrote down processing versus thinking, processing and thinking, bottom up and top down, metacognition and meta awareness, memory and perception, free will, choice. I wrote down what auto audit question mark what question mark, but really it is like tending to your own operating system and to your own capacity to learn, to look at what you're learning and working and applying your intelligence in the service of. So that seems like a good place to stop for now because I've been yapping and it's good practice for me to yap. All right, more later.